Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. On today's episode, we're going to talk about Inter Miami's season-ending loss to Atlanta United. We're going to do some soul-searching. We're going to talk about the performances. We'll give out some awards, and we'll have some bigger picture conversations at the end because this is a soul-searching type of day, a soul-searching type of episode and week where Inter Miami needs to really reflect on who they are, what they want to do, and whether they are in the right direction to accomplish those things that they want to do. As always, I'm your host, Scotty. I'm here with my co-host, Saur. And I just want to start by asking you, how are you feeling today, my man?
Yeah, not the conversation I was expecting to have today. That's it, man. Season's over. I don't know if we actually thought this was going to be this quick. We expected us to go all the way, obviously. First of all, congratulations to Atlanta. They were brilliant over the course of the 3 games. And Inter Miami fell short on the day, on the night, and over 3 games. And you've said this before, what champions do is win games and show up in big moments, and we did not. So very sad, very disappointed, but that's the reality, and we have to deal with it.
Yeah, so that's the plan today. We're going to break down the episode as we always do. We're going to go a little bit faster than we normally do because this is an episode where I think we want to devote some time to bigger picture conversations. But I wanted to start by just saying thank you to all of you that to watch and listen, and to you, Saur, for being a part of this. I remember it was about this time a year ago when I first called you and said, hey, this would be a cool thing to try out. And into the offseason and the preseason, we did a few. And I remember the first time we went live and we had, one commenter, and my girlfriend went in the chat just to make sure he didn't feel like he was the only one. And we've built this as in all of us, not just you and I, but everyone in the chat has built this into something that makes my Inter Miami fandom and experience better. And so I wanted to thank you for being a part of it, and everyone in the chat and everyone that listens to this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Thank you for being a part of this because it has made my fandom so much richer and such a better experience. And I hope that we do the same for you because you guys have made it so much better for us. So I really appreciate that. And I did want to mention that as we end our first season of the Dry Pink Dialogue.
Yeah, and just before you move on from that, again, big thank you to you as well for getting us started in this journey. It's been absolutely fantastic. We've come to the end of the first season, but we're just getting started, man. This is just the start, right? We are planning to keep going next season, bring it on. It can't start early enough. And I'm excited to see what the next season holds for us as Inter Miami fans for the Drive Pink Dialogue as a platform. And it's been absolutely phenomenal getting the opportunity to speak to you, to speak to all these fans and interacting with everyone online. And I'm just surprised you and I haven't had a falling out yet, because I was thinking you'd probably disagree with me on half the things. Well, you always disagree with me on half the things, but we've maintained it cordial enough and we've had some healthy conversations together. So I appreciate that. And I'm very happy to be on board this journey with you and with everyone else who listens to us and watches us on YouTube.
Well, listen, we may have had a problem if we disagreed on half the things, but fortunately we disagree on all the things. So it actually works out well. Yeah. Okay, let's just get into the game because, like I said, I want to do a speed run through this game. So Inter Miami, they break through first in the 17th minute. Messi puts a really nice ball forward to Diego Gomez, who then turns and finds Messi central. Messi puts on a good shot, but it was a really nice Guzan save that parried it away, but it sort of falls to the feet of Matías Rojas, who is able to turn and put it in the back of the net. Inter Miami opens in the 17th minute with a 1-0 lead, and it does feel like, okay, what happened in the past is in the past. This team has so much talent. They are inevitable. They will make this happen. And that lasted about 2 minutes. In the 19th minute, Dax McCarty puts a ball in. It gets deflected by Jamal Tiare. It gets deflected by Federico Redondo, but it lands at the feet of Jamal Tiare, who on the first touch slams it past Drake Callender. Should we stop there and give some blame for this one?
Yeah, I have plenty of blame to assign, but first I wanted to start with the first goal. Just mention that I thought that was a very promising start in terms of how we constructed the goal, because I noticed some things that I really liked in the build-up, and I saw that Inter Miami did some things different compared to what they did in the last game, in game 2, and that's play out from the flanks. Messi had a ball to Gomez, who ran the byline and put the ball back in, and that's where the danger was coming in. And I wanted to use that as an example to say that everything good Inter Miami did in terms of attack was coming down the flanks, and that's going to be a big theme throughout this conversation today. Everything we did, everything we built up in offense was all through the flanks, and I wish we had done more of that. So I was quite happy with the way we constructed that first goal, and then that happiness lasted barely any seconds because um, David Martinez didn't have the best didn't have the best game yesterday. I thought he was very poor, and the biggest example of that was that first goal. Right, awful defending from Martinez and Aviles. I think the issue happens where Tiare goes inwards. No, Miranchuk goes inwards. David Martinez follows him, and then they have a misunderstanding, miscommunication between Aviles and Martinez. They don't figure out who's going to be switching to whom. Both of them end up on Miranchuk, leave Tiare completely open in behind. He runs in. Really good shot. I thought Drake Callender could have maybe done something a little bit different. I'm assigning primary blame to Martinez, a little bit of blame to Aviles for not staying switched on and agreeing to cover for David Martinez when he's moving inwards and just leaving plenty of space in behind for Tiare. Not a great start for our defense at all.
Yeah, it's hard because there was a deflection. Dax McCarty's pass was, I think, going to Miranchuk, who's making that inside run that both Aviles and Martinez are sort of eyeing. But if you're Martinez, you have to understand that that other man, Jamal Tiare, is coming into your area and you have to pick him up. He doesn't make the pivot, and Tiare has a wide open shot. It was a nice shot. First touch off of all, it was a foot and a half off the ground. So a really nice shot from Tiare. It would have been a really impressive save if Drake Callender makes it. We would have looked at that and said, that's a great save. Not impossible, but it would have been a great save. So doable, but not sort of an everyday save that he messed up on. And then like 40 seconds later of actual game time, but 2 minutes later on the score sheet, there's a bad turnover from David Martinez, and the ball gets forward quickly to Miranchuk, who sort of passed Martinez because Martinez isn't in a good position to defend because he has the bad turnover. He's kept on side by Aviles. Miranchuk receives the ball and he gets a soft touch to Tiare, who once again puts it past Drake Callender. Again, as far as Callender's concerned, it would have been a nice save. It was from point blank range. He had, it would have just been reaching out, and if you get it right, you get it right. But if you don't, it's a goal. That's what happened. So it would have been an amazing save. It doesn't come to fruition. Lots of blame for me on David Martinez. Just an absolute horrific 2-minute period for him that in some ways cost Inter Miami the game. It certainly cost them the momentum in this moment. And it was a battle from this point on, right? There was no running away with this game.
Yeah, and the momentum was in Inter Miami's favor when that first goal went in. I thought we were doing fine. The first 10 minutes looked like we were okay. There seemed to be some semblance of control. It wasn't perfect by any means, and there was a little bit lack of penetration in the final third, but we were dominating possession. I remember the possession stats were some like 56, 58% to Inter Miami. We were on the ball a lot. We were keeping it clean, not too many errors on the ball, and I liked the look of it. I thought that the composure was there from the players. We got that breakthrough, and then it just all completely crumbled down. And a lot of it had to do with individual errors, right? I didn't see issues with the transition or defensive midfield position in the 2 goals that we conceded. It was simply the defenders not doing their jobs. As simple as that. David Martinez, horrendous pass in the middle of the ball, in the middle of the pitch, loses the ball in a very dangerous position, and then he just stands there ball watching, and Miranchuk's running in behind him, and that's it. That's the death of the defensive line, right? When your main center back doesn't track back and doesn't remain switched on. So I thought it was a lapse of concentration.
Yeah, really, really poor from David Martinez. I don't know if he's going to get an award later. I don't think I'm planning on giving him one, but from his perspective, it is a terrible ball to try and pass through. It has no chance of getting through, and then he's caught up and out of position. We've talked about on this podcast how we're a little uncomfortable with how aggressive David Martinez is playing because it's just not great. And that's sort of, it came back to bite us in the worst moment. And it happens 30 seconds after he gives up another goal. He probably feels partially responsible for that. So he feels the need to make up for that by trying to make a big pass to get the ball going forward. And it falls apart. So that was tough. Inter Miami does answer just a couple minutes later. Diego Gomez goes 5-hole and Brad Guzan in transition. He gets a ball up the left wing, and 5-hole being between the legs. It's a hockey reference, but he was called offside. So it did feel for a 5-minute period there like it was back and forth, and Inter Miami had answers even when they kind of got punched in the face. But it wasn't dominant like Inter Miami really would have wanted. I know Saur said he thought that they were they had the composure that you would have expected from the get-go. I didn't necessarily feel that way. But you know, it's a playoff game, and you're creating a couple opportunities, but you're not creating enough to feel like you should be dominating the game. Let's fast forward into the second half. When Messi ties it, we'll go all the way to the 65th minute. Luis Suárez sort of releases Cello down that right side. Cello puts in a nice cross, and actually it's perfectly placed over the head of the 6'5" Stein Gregerson and onto the head of the 5'7" Lionel Messi, who heads it in. And this is the first point where I felt, okay, we're back in this. I think we're going to win. It's 2-2. Messi finally scores. We finally beat Brad Guzan. I feel like we're in a comfortable spot in that very moment. But it had, up to this point, been a very uncomfortable game, in my opinion.
Yeah, apologies for that. My internet broke down. This is going to be the last time that I have poor connectivity. Moving on from here, I think we should be fine. Completely agree with what you said. I heard lack of concentration, not enough composure. Those were the points that I had written down as well. I don't know if you heard when I said this, but I asked my sister, who was watching the highlights with me when I was doing the rewatch of the game, and I asked her to tell me what does she think is wrong with this play when we conceded that second goal. And she was like, the players don't seem concentrated. And I was like, that is spot on. That's exactly what happened. And that's not what you can do in a playoff game, right? This is the do or die playoff game as well. You have to be completely locked in. And it just felt like we were at times playing at a very pedestrian pace. So completely agree with you. But once that second goal went in for Inter Miami, it just felt like, okay, now we've got the hang of it. We've got two good, well-constructed goals, both goals coming in from the wing side. And it seemed like we had momentum on our side. I think we were better in that second half. Still not perfect by any means, but we were dominating the ball and trying to create something. We were playing too centrally a lot of the times, which was really frustrating. But at least it didn't seem like Atlanta was coming back with too much in terms of their transitions and didn't have too many opportunities, honestly. So in that sense, it was fine. But once that second goal went in, I was sort of a little bit more composed and happier to think that Inter Miami is going to see this game through and we're going to actually win this.
Yeah. So Inter Miami takes the lead. They have the players they want on the pitch. They have an attacking formation. They have a couple defensive moments where Atlanta tries to hit them on the break in defensive transition, but it doesn't really come back to bite them. Toto Aviles had a couple of really nice one-on-one defensive, stops. And then it does come to bite them, and it's partially responsible of Toto Aviles in the 76th minute. He goes down with some sort of lower body injury. And then David Martinez, Leo Campana, Matias Rojas, maybe Jordi Alba, they sort of all stop playing, and Pedro Amador puts in a cross to Bartosz Schlich, who gets the header and puts it in, and they go up 3-2 with 15 minutes left in the game, and it's do or die at home. Yeah.
That was horrible.
Do we even need to talk about this? I mean, it's horrible. It's awful. In the moment, I was really upset. But now that I've had 24 hours to reflect on it, I don't have anything else to say. You just can't do that.
No, that was schoolboy defending. You play to the whistle. Everyone knows that. And for players like Jordi Alba to have their hands up, David Martinez, the body language was what really got me off, because It was just wrong. It was terrible. It was not there. You play to the whistle, regardless of whether you have a player injured on the ground. It's just schoolboy errors, man, and that cost us dearly. You play to the whistle, always, always.
And so we throw on bodies. Campana had already been on at that point, but we throw on Robert Taylor. Sergio Busquets does come into the game. And we're just all out attack for the last 15, 20 minutes of the game, trying to get the equalizer. And it just doesn't come. There were a couple opportunities for Inter Miami sort of before that where they could have put the game away. Jordi Alba had a header that Brad Guzan makes an incredible save on. Guzan had another really good game, but ultimately Inter Miami falls and the season's over.
Yeah, it's a very disappointing way to lose the game as well, because it almost felt like we just weren't up for it, were we? It didn't feel like we wanted to win this game, and we deserved to lose, honestly. All 3 goals we conceded were very amateur, were very poor. Individual decision-making was not on point. It just wasn't clicking. Everything seemed to be too rushed, too hasty. The chemistry wasn't there. The balance wasn't there. I've heard the word balance a lot being thrown around, and it's absolutely correct. The team really suffered because the balance was just not correct across the pitch. And we survived during the regular season with these issues that we faced because it was a long season. But when it comes to do or die games, when it comes to one-off knockouts, you need to be perfect across 90 minutes. You need to be perfect across 3 games, and we just weren't. And the signs were there. We shouldn't be entirely surprised. This is we expected some of the issues. We just thought the quality would shine through. It did not, and our season ended. Simple as that.
Yeah, let's spend a minute or two talking about Atlanta. Pedro Amador, incredible player. I mean, what a find by Atlanta. He had another assist in this game, the game winner. He had another opportunity or two where it felt like, man, if that touch was a little bit better, it would have been another goal. I think there was one in the...
He was cooking Chelo Wigan on that side. Like, Chelo Wigan did not understand how to defend Pedro Amador.
In the 15th minute, he had one that was sort of a quick ball to Tiare that hits the post. He had another one later on that the ball doesn't find him. It kind of gets knocked on the way to him, but he had a clear lane to get that ball, to get the cross back in for an easy tap. And if it did get to him, he was really impressive. And then Brad Guzan also was phenomenal. I didn't think he would have another performance like that because that's not who he is at this point. But I guess that's who he is in Chase Stadium because he was great. He had a number of huge saves, and some were even more impressive individual saves than what he did in that first game. On that Jordi Alba header that came in the 52nd minute, it's just an incredible save. And you're talking about having your best players have big moments. And that was sort of one of the things that Inter Miami didn't have. So yeah, they showed up. They played like winners, you know?
Yeah, they played like winners for sure, and they deserve to win. You can't take anything away from them. I don't want people to discredit saying Miami didn't play to their full potential or whatever. Atlanta didn't let Miami play to the full potential. Their game plan was top-notch. Their tactics were on point, and Tata Martino got outcoached by an interim manager, as Ash clearly points out here. Valentino, man, he's absolutely been the thorn in Inter Miami's side this entire regular season, but more so in postseason.
I don't think Valentino did anything special, actually. I
think he did something special in the sense that he motivated his team enough to go out and get that result, because it would have been very easy for this team to just roll over after that first game, or even after losing so many first-team players at the start of the season. So he did definitely bring them together. But tactically, of course, he didn't, he wasn't a genius in any way. He just made sure his team was compact and neutralized some of the weapons that Inter Miami has offensively. But still, I think credit is due there, because they had 3 games to go up against Inter Miami, who has been touted as potentially the best team in the history of the MLS, which is now a doubt for sure. But yeah, he did his job, man. He motivated his players.
Yeah, listen, they sat in a really low block. They sat really tight, and they didn't let Messi beat them in the middle part of the pitch. And that is what every team should be doing against Inter Miami. And then they had the speed over the top with Tiare and Sabalob Janitze to hit Miami in the other way. So they have the players, I think, to play that style effectively. But really, they just did exactly what I think any team we would have faced up until maybe Columbus, maybe the Galaxy would have done. Certainly Orlando City would do something similar. Certainly Charlotte would have done something similar in the next round. So I think they just played exactly what they should have done. Now, I will say Atlanta did have that sort of upper tier potential that I think a lot of the other teams that we could have played in the first round didn't have. We went into deadline day potentially facing Montreal, potentially facing DC, potentially facing Philadelphia. I think Atlanta, at the time we said this, was the scariest of those four because they have the speed, they have some veteran leadership, they have solidity in the defense. So we talked about how they were the scariest of all of those teams, but still, Inter Miami significantly more talented on an individual player by player basis.
Easily.
There's no reason that they should have lost this game. I don't think a single player for Atlanta starts for Inter Miami. Maybe Guzan in the form he had, but aside from that, I really don't think so.
And I mean, a special mention to Dax McCarty as well. I thought he had a really good series overall. Yesterday's game, he was quiet in the sense that he didn't seem to be too involved, but I really liked how he locked Messi down because once he came off the pitch, Messi seemed to have a little bit more freedom. I did think he was completely, underrated for this Atlanta team this entire time he played against Inter Miami, at least.
Yeah. Just some tactical points. Listen, one of the reasons we do tactics on a regular basis for these post-game episodes is to talk about what Inter Miami can do better, how they can improve, what weaknesses they could have exploited, or how they can do better moving forward so that they can win the biggest games. And that is irrelevant now because it's going to be a new team come February. It's going to be lower stakes. And so I don't know if we need to really focus on what Inter Miami should have or had to do better. We don't need to have big conversations about that. But there was a couple things I noticed. Diego Gomez making runs over the top on that left side was, I think, Inter Miami's most effective strategy to create goal scoring opportunities. Felt like they gave up on that in the second half.
It did, didn't it? It just didn't. It stopped happening, and I was so surprised because we had 2 or 3 opportunities where we got in behind them. I thought I was the only one who noticed that, but glad you mentioned that because that was our most effective outlet for sure.
No, I saw him in the first minute of the second half. He sort of makes that run and he realizes he's not going to get the ball. And so he sort of cuts it once he gets to that back line. But aside from that, I didn't even see him make that run again in the second half. And listen, as we get to the end of the game and Atlanta sitting back, that's sort of not open in the same way. But it felt like they quit on that too soon when I did think it was their most effective way to beat this Atlanta team on the night. They certainly were relying on their bigger players. And I guess that brings me to the next point I want to talk about, bigger picture, which is that Inter Miami, I thought, didn't get great performances from their best players and their veterans. David Martinez, we talked about his culpability for a number of the goals. I thought Jordi Alba was poor. I thought Luis Suárez was really poor.
Really poor.
I did do the post-game instant reaction last night. I talked about Lionel Messi. I thought he was better on my rewatch. Maybe we'll talk about him more. I thought he was
good. He was everything good that was happening with Inter Miami's attack, and that was not a lot. So he was definitely a pivotal aspect of it, but I think he was trying too hard to go through centrally, and he just kept doing the same thing again and again, and I wish he had changed it up a little bit. Because when he did change it up, it really worked well. He was responsible for spreading that ball out to Gomez. He put in some really lovely assists into Jordi Alba, some really good spreading up the play. But overall, I thought he could definitely have done better. And I think it's a little bit harsh, but when you have the best player to ever grace the sport of football playing for your team, you do have your expectations higher as well. So maybe it's just our expectations, and we just wanted him to pull us out of this really dire situation that we found ourselves in, and he wasn't able to. He had a couple of really good free kick opportunities as well that I thought he could have done a lot better on. He just hit the post both times. So definitely room for improvement, but he was much better than the rest of the players in the front line. That's for sure.
Yeah. You mentioned a couple free kick opportunities that he hit into the wall. I thought his service on set pieces wasn't great. His service on corners wasn't great. But again, I thought he was better than my initial watch. But listen, the best player on the field the best performance on the field came from Brad Guzan. The second best came from Jamal Tiare. And so when you have Lionel Messi in a do or die playoff game, you expect him to be the
100%.
best player, and he wasn't. And so I think criticism comes from the lofty standards we have for Messi, not that he was bad on an individual basis. I think if we win this game, we feel very fine. We feel good. We feel fine about what Messi did last night, but it's just we needed something special from somebody. And who do you expect something special from if not Lionel Messi? So,
and I do think that's a very interesting talking point as well, because going into the next season, knowing that Lionel Messi is getting older, he is losing that, extra spark that he always brings through. Of course, it's inevitable. We do need to realize that he is on the downward trend, and you can't now rely solely on him. So you need to provide him with the right service and the right players around him. So maybe that's an important talking point that we can touch on in the off season, that how do we build this team to get the best out of Lionel Messi as well? Because I don't know how much more time he has in carrying into Miami on his own back when he needs to.
And it's we're going to come back to this actually, but before this episode's over, like I said, we're going to speed run through the game to have some bigger picture conversations and do a little bit of soul searching. But I think that we relied on Suárez and Jordi Alba and Messi to win this game for us. And like I said, I thought Messi was fine, but I didn't think Suárez and I didn't think Jordi Alba came to play. There's a very famous meme that's like a player going to the playoffs for the first time, and he's just like, the lights were brighter than I was expecting. And it almost felt like they weren't ready for the moment. And we'll talk about that more after we finish awards. But
do you think it was they weren't ready, or do you think it was a little bit of complacency and underestimating to Atlanta? Because I think it was more of the latter than the former. But
no, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it doesn't matter. No point crying over spilt milk.
Okay. The other thing tactically, I guess there's a couple things. We've mentioned this a lot, but they don't create enough width with their front three. They didn't do that again in this game. We harp on it so much because we want them to do it in moments like this, so that they can win games like this, and they can create the offense they need in games like this. So that was disappointing to not see again. We talked about it in the pregame. We talked about it in last week's postgame. They needed to do that. They didn't. I don't know if we need to harp on it, but that was another thing that they were missing in this game. It's why they couldn't create more offense. That's why they were struggling to get Messi clean-cut opportunities.
And when they were doing that, it was looking fine. Like when Diego Gomez did make those runs in behind on that left wing side and cut in to create that chance for Messi, it worked. So I don't know why they didn't do enough of that, or why they stopped doing that after the first half, because it definitely was the best outlet that we have to break that Atlanta squad. So yeah, just I wish there was somebody who could get our message across to the coaching staff, because we could clearly see what needed to be done, and it just didn't happen, which is interesting.
Yeah, let's talk about Tata. There's a couple things, but let's start with the starting lineup. There's no Yannick Bright available. There is no Sergio Busquets available to go 90 minutes. And so you're a little handicapped in terms of what you can do. We talked about how we were okay with it. We saw the vulnerabilities. We knew in defensive transition they would be a little weak. We thought the back two could hold up. Tata Martinez, I think, let us down there in terms of just his individual performance in that game. The midfield didn't create a ton going forward to sort of overwhelm the opposition in offense. So we didn't create a significant number of opportunities in exchange for the vulnerability defensively. It's easy to say in hindsight he should have gone with a back three, because hindsight's 2020. We lost the game. But again, I can understand why he did that, and I will give deference to Tata, knowing he's been a coach for 40 years and probably knows more than me in certain situations. So I can understand why he did it, and I don't know what else to say. Like, it was wrong in retrospect.
I would still go for the 4-3-3. If you give me an option of redoing that entire thing, I would still go for the 4-3-3. I don't think Tata's team selection was bad. Maybe not perfect, but we were okay with it. And I think I'm still okay with it after watching that game. I think the setup was fine. There were not that many opportunities that Atlanta had to catch us on the break or counter against us. So it did work. The problem was the individual errors. The problem was the defense was amateurish, and you can't blame that on the coach, right? When your defender is basically switching off, not tracking his man, leaving him space in behind, passing the ball to the opposition in dangerous places, and then not tracking the runner in behind. When your main center back falls down on the floor and the team just stops playing, you can't blame that on Tata Martino's team selection or setup. I know there was some conversation about how Tata Martino should have gone with a 5 at the back to be more defensively solid. I think that would have handicapped us even more offensively. If we had stuck to our guns and if the individual performances were fine and if our defenders didn't let us down, this could have been a 2-1 game and we win this and be happy with how we performed. So I don't think when it comes to the team selection or the setup, there are too many concerns from my end. I don't want to harp on that for Tata Martino.
Yeah, I'm just going to say a couple stats that came out of this game, or this series rather, just so everyone is sort of on the same page. In the 75th minute of all 3 games, Inter Miami was tied or leading. And so they lost the game in the last 15 minutes, last 20 minutes of both game 2 and game 3. Here's another one. When Inter Miami scored the first goal this season, they did this 19 times this year. They had 14 wins, 3 draws, and 2 losses. And those 2 losses were game 2 and game 3. So the entire season, when they scored first, it was almost a guaranteed win, but it was a guaranteed result until it wasn't in the playoffs. Obviously, they scored both. They scored first in both game 2 and game 3, and they lose both games. So that's difficult to deal with. And then lastly, in 3 halves with Yannick Bright, they gave up 1 goal. And then in 3 halves without Yannick Bright, they gave up 5 goals. So listen, it was just they were.
Isn't there another one where like Lionel Messi in the 18 games he's played with Inter Miami this season, he's lost 3 games and all of those 3 have been to Atlanta or something like that? That's wild.
I think when he goes 90 minutes, they've won. Yeah. The only 3 times they've lost have been to Atlanta. And so it's one of those things where it's hard to assign individual blame from like a big picture perspective. They got the starts they wanted. They had the players on the field that they wanted. They were able to create a ton of sort of half chances. And it was just sort of the individual moments where your star players are supposed to put that pinpoint pass in. They didn't. Jordi Alba didn't have the pinpoint crosses. Pedro Amador did. Drake Callender didn't have those crazy saves. Brad Guzan did. Miranchuk had 1 or 2 great balls in to get assists, and Inter Miami couldn't counter that. And so it's just one of those times where if you replay this game, I think 10 times, Inter Miami wins a lot of them, or replay the series 10 times, Inter Miami wins a lot of them, but they didn't win the moment counted. And that's a problem. Before we go to awards, and I want to do this quickly, the substitutes, Campana in the 60th minute, and then
I
Busquets
like that.
and like Busquets. Yeah, I did too. I thought it was aggressive, which I appreciated. And then Busquets comes on in like the 77th minute, and Robert Taylor in the 83rd minute. Any problem with that? Or you're okay
I
with
wish
those
Robert
decisions?
Taylor had come on alongside Campana just to use that left wing spot a little bit more, but not too many problems. I could immediately see the impact Campana had. He was defensively everywhere on the pitch. He was playing really well. I really like what I saw from Campana until that goal, because I feel like if one of him, David Martinez, Jordi Alba, or one of the players had picked out the Atlanta player who got on the end of the ball, we would have been fine, but not to be. No, don't want to harp on too much about it. We know Tata Martino, he's not going to make too many substitutions. Sergio Busquets was more like an emergency sort of a sub on anyway. So
they weren't going to bring him on if we were.
Yeah, he was not. I don't think he was ready. Yeah.
No Julian Gressel, who I think is the only obvious candidate to come off the bench that didn't. So it is what it is. They were a little low on depth because they were missing David Ruiz. They were missing Yannick Bright. And a couple guys had to start in their place, so they didn't have a ton of opportunities. Okay, let's get to awards because, again, we want to have some bigger picture conversations, so we're speeding through this a little bit. I'm a gentleman, so I'm going to let you give out the man of the match, but I will remind everyone on this show, we give out 6 awards, an Inter Miami man of the match, a Heron that flew north, and 2 individual awards each. And I am looking forward to hearing who you have for this this one?
I was when I was watching the game up until like the 60th minute, I was thinking about who my man of the match is, and I really wanted to give it to Toto Aviles because I thought he was having a good game. And then I rewatched the game, and I also obviously he had that absurd moment on the ground, so that completely disqualified him from this award. So I am going to give this man of the match award to Federico Redondo, who I don't think put too much of a foot wrong in terms of what he was supposed to do. He had some really promising stats. He tried to deal for the ball 14 times. He won that by about 10 times. He had some 78 out of 88 pass completions, gave away the ball only 9 times. I thought he was very clean. He was very good in that midfield. He did his job to the T, and we didn't get run over in the midfield, which was the surprising bit. And a lot of the times our issue was the back line, the 2 center backs rather than the midfield this time around. And I want to give Redondo credit for actually holding his own because we doubted him and we said that he needs to show up. And unfortunately for him, everyone around him didn't have as much of a good game. But I thought he was really good. And in a game where I struggled to find too many positive performances, his was one that definitely stood out for me at least.
Yeah, I think there's a shout for Messi. I think there's a shout for Toto Aviles. But I'm fine with Federico Redondo. I thought he was everywhere. And I think he was asked to do a huge job in the absence of Yannick Brighton, in the absence of Sergi Busquets. And I don't think we were incredibly confident that he was going to be able to do that. And I thought he did it fine and well enough for this team to succeed. So he got a yellow card early too, which I think it was like the 35th minute. And he was able to stay on the pitch. So yeah, I'm fine with that. Federico Redondo, man of the match. And I just want to say he had a very nice end to the season, I think. After a couple poor games towards the end of the season, the last 4 or 5 games were really solid from him. So good finish for him. Hopefully he bounces into a really good start next year.
Yep.
The Heron that flew north, and I hope you guys get the reference for the name of this episode. The Heron flew north on this show is the player that was doing the wrong thing. It's because herons in Florida, they don't fly anywhere for the winter. So if you catch them flying north, they're doing the wrong thing. Yada, yada. You guys know the deal. And I am giving it to Luis Suárez, who I thought was really, really poor. And we talk about your best players showing up in the biggest moments. And I thought Suárez didn't do that. He had a number of poor touches, put a number of balls, especially from his head, just sort of way off target. I thought he had a number of bad touches. He had a number of opportunities where he could have made the final pass into a goal-scoring opportunity, and he just sort of flubbed it or just passed it into nowhere or to the defense. And so when you're talking about a player that is in contention for the MVP and is one of the greats of all time, I know we gave a little bit of flack to Messi, but I thought Messi actually had some good moments. I thought Suárez was really poor. Partially responsible for the second goal, so it wasn't all bad, but I think compared to what we needed from him in this game, he didn't deliver really. And so when you're that player, you need to deliver, and he didn't. So I'm giving it to Luis Suárez.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. There were a couple of other shouts that you could have maybe given to that wouldn't have minded. David Martinez, Matas Rojas, perhaps. Luis Suárez, definitely top contender for that. The biggest problem, well, not problem, but one thing that we need to keep in mind with Luis Suárez is he might be having an absolute stinker of a game for 89 minutes, but he can score in the 90th minute. And that can completely change the game around for Inter Miami. But when he doesn't have that one-off chance where he can make that opportunity, that means he's stinking up the place for 90 minutes. And I think yesterday's game was basically him stinking up the place for 90 minutes. He was poor, very bad touches at times, did not link up well with the final, with the front three, just did not click for him. I think Jordi Alba had a really good ball into him once where it went across him and he couldn't reach it in time. He just felt a step back and he just wasn't on his game. And I don't want to make this an agenda conversation, and this is not comparing Campana to Suárez, but you could immediately see the difference that Campana had in terms of energy and input and getting on the ball and making something happen as soon as he came on the pitch. And that's another conversation for a coach to think about, whether when Luis Suárez is not performing well, do you take him off and put on someone like Campana, who could be a target man in there for you to put the ball into the box for. But when you have Suárez and Campana both on the pitch, Campana has to play as that left winger or in a position that's not that central striker. So I agree with you. Not a great performance from Luis Suarez. No complaints there.
Yeah, listen, the conversation doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
The Campana, should Suarez come, like that conversation doesn't matter anymore because this is going to be a new team in January or February. So it's not even worth having the conversation at this point. Maybe we'll have it again in January. Okay, talk to me about your first award.
I've got a couple of good named awards. Maybe I can reference them later, but I'm going to go with this award because I want to talk about this one player and I want to see what your thoughts are. Sold Us a Dream Award.
Can you say that again?
Sold Us a Dream Award.
The Sold Us a Dream Award goes to Tata Martino because when he first came, we believed in him and he didn't deliver in the most important game.
Absolutely spot on. Exactly what I wanted it to be. Very promising player, man. He's very good on the ball, has some really positive qualities, but when it mattered the most, he wasn't good. First game, he played really well, but I think it was more everyone else around him absolutely locked in and with really good concentration. And he is a very attacking defender. And when your center back partnership isn't the best, when you don't have that level of chemistry, and you pointed this out, so kudos to you. And I sort of dismissed that when you said it, but the last two games have been over the course of 180 minutes. I think he might have been the worst player on that pitch. So, David Martinez, man, you really sold us a dream and did not live up to the standards that we thought you would have. So very poor yesterday and was directly responsible for 2 goals. So I really wanted to talk about him, and surprising he didn't get the Herons Fly North award.
Yeah, no, listen, he was bad. I mentioned it several times over the last couple of weeks. It made me nervous how aggressive he was being. And last game, he had Noah Allen behind him to sort of cover for him when he went forward. Before that, he had Busquets to cover for him and Yannick Bright to cover for him. And he didn't have Noah Allen, Busquets, or Yannick Bright to cover for him in this game, and he got absolutely exposed. I will say he looks slow compared to when we first got him. And so I'm wondering if he never fully recovered from that groin injury that he suffered. He came back and he was able to kick the ball around, but I don't think that top end speed, either he doesn't trust it yet or it hasn't come back yet. So he's coming back next year. He's on loan until July of next year. So hopefully he gets an off season. He rests. He gets that groin a little healthier and he comes back with a little more pace because it was bad. It was bad. He was lacking pace and he was getting burnt and he was making mistakes and he was trying to be Superman when we just needed him to not be our kryptonite. And
more so, I think the fact that he didn't have that much pace to cover for some of the aggressiveness that he was showing. He was going in for the ball at wrong times, getting beaten, and then just not being able to recover, right? And I think that puts Toto Aviles in a bad position because then he has to do the recovering for him. And there were a couple of times that Toto had a really good recovery run, put that tackle in on Tiare in the middle of the box, did really good. But David Martinez, sometimes a little bit too aggressive, goes in too hard and loses the ball and just gets turned over. So yeah, he is going to come back. You're right. But there is a world where I see him as a bench player and us upgrading our defense. But we're going to talk about that. Tell me your next award.
I'm giving out the Heartbeat Award.
Ian Frey, Yannick Bright, we missed him. Is that award to Sergio Busquets?
The Heartbeat Award, which is my award that is like very Inter Miami themed and oftentimes filled with a lot of gratitude. It goes to Diego Gomez.
Diego Gomez.
This is, gee, thanks. This is the last game for Miami. And he was fine. I thought he had a solid performance. He almost scored a goal, or he scored a goal, but was a little bit offsides. I thought he created another chance in the first half. He was all over the field. I thought we had big plans for him this series. And because of the Yannick Bright injury, because of the Busquets injury, we weren't able to see that fully realized. But he was a great player for Inter Miami. I am going to miss him. And I'm really glad he was a Heron, because he did a lot of great things for us.
And I'm going to follow his career with pride, man. He started with
Me
Inter
too.
Miami.
Yeah, me too.
He broke on the scene with Inter Miami. I know both of us love to watch the Premier League. I'm going to see him at Brighton whenever he gets the chance to perform, and I'm going to be rooting for him as long as he doesn't score against my Premier League team. But yeah, fantastic player, really good potential. He is going to be missed, and thank you for your services, Diego Gomez, because you've been phenomenal. You've been really, really good.
Now, that said, he didn't play as a central box-to-box midfielder the entire second half of the season. He got that injury, as you may remember. He got injured, I think, maybe it was against Nashville early in the season at home. And he was out for maybe 6 or 7 weeks. When he came back as a left winger. And we never saw that absolute wrecking ball in the midfield again, really. And that was disappointing. And that's, I don't know why that was. Maybe they had an agreement with Brighton to play him there. Maybe Gomez wanted to play there to improve his skill set before going to the Premier League. And that was part of the conditions for him to stay. That's just me speculating. But not only did it take Robert Taylor off the pitch, it took Diego Gomez out of his best position, where he was, at one point, I thought, our third best player behind Messi and Suárez, even ahead of Jordi Alba, even ahead of Busquets. So that was disappointing, and I'm sorry and kind of sad we never got to see him back in the midfield, because that's where he's a wrecking ball. That's where he's going to go be a Premier League player, and we didn't get that the second half of the season. So thank you again for your service, and good luck. And like you said, I'm going to follow your career with pride, because you were one of my favorites while you were here. Okay, what's your second award?
Again, I've got a couple of good ones, but I'm going to go with the Groundhog Day Award.
The Groundhog Day Award goes to Toto Aviles, because he was playing really well, and then he saw a shadow, and then he fell back and fainted and gave up a goal.
You know what Groundhog Day means?
It means you check if there's 6 more weeks of winter.
No. Groundhog Day is a reference to
means,
a day.
actually.
That is what it means, but also it's a trope for a day being repeated again and again and again and again, and you're basically living the same day again. Have you not seen the movie Groundhog Day? Anyways, that's what it means when you're reliving the same day again and again. And also, Toto Aviles was on the ground looking for hogs for about 5 minutes, and we conceded the goal. He was doing so well today, man. He was.
Is it Toto Aviles?
It is Toto Aviles. He was playing with a lot of confidence. He looked good. He was sweeping up. He was not putting too much of a foot wrong. It was David Martinez who was putting him in difficult positions, and he was trying to recover and do well. And then he had that one moment of absurdity that we so often come to expect from Toto Aviles. Either it's a yellow card, it's a red card, or it's lying on the ground wincing while the rest of your players are basically shouting at the referee to stop the game. I can understand why he was on the ground and why he wanted the game to be stopped, but that was poor, man. You can't do that in the playoff game, and it just felt like one more moment of absurdity from Toto Aviles cost us the game. I thought he was fine the rest of the game.
I'm not going to give him any blame for that because he left the game. Like, he could have been in a ton of pain, and we don't know that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I think a lot of it, it's not like he just came back up 30 seconds later and was running around. He had to leave the game for Busquets. Yeah. And I don't want to assume that an athlete is healthy or hurt when they have to leave the game, right? Most of my blame for that moment comes to the rest of the team. Yeah, and specifically Martinez and Campana, who sort of let that midfielder run through. But listen, if you want to blame him, that's fine. I had an award for him called the Smart Water Award, because he just needs to drink a little smart water.
Yeah, and the award was not to blame him for the moment that was, but it was more to say that I thought he was having a really promising game, and it just feels like he was central to that one moment that cost us the goal. And I don't want to again directly blame him for that, but it just happened. He was the center of attention there. But I thought he was having a really good game, and he is going to come back as well next season. We'll see whether he goes away, like whether he gets transferred or not, but I expect him to come back next season. But I hope he works on his smartness. As you said, the Smart Water Award is also a good one. So, yeah.
No, I thought he had a really good game too. Again, if it's not for that moment, I think he's the man of the match. So good that he got an award. Okay, again, we've been speeding through this, but I think we want to get to some bigger conversations. So I will give my last award that will lead us into our next conversation that is a little bit bigger and we can slow down the pace a little bit. And that is the lights were brighter than expected award.
Lionel Messi?
You want to guess again?
Jordi Alba?
You want to guess again?
Tata Martino?
No, it was Jordi Alba. You were so
right.
good, man. That was awesome. Only
Thank
took
you.
2 tries.
Why'd you say I want to guess again then?
Don't worry about that. Jordi Alba was really poor in this game. I thought he was poor in the second game as well. And he had a quote after the game that I think we need to discuss. He says after the game, "This format seems unfair. I would have the champion of one conference against the champion of the other to make it as fair as possible." He was complaining about the playoff format after his team got beat by a team that they had a 34-point advantage on in the regular season, that they gave up 5 goals in the last game and a half, that they were beat by a team that almost missed the playoffs. And he was complaining about the format. And it just felt like it felt like Jordi Alba. It felt like Luis Suárez. It felt like David Martinez. It felt like Matías Rojas. It felt like a little bit Drake Callender. It felt like the veterans on this team and the stars specifically did not understand the magnitude of what this is. And that kind of scares me a little bit about this team. This is all that matters in this league. And they didn't treat it like that based on their play. And, who knows what they're thinking behind the scenes. They're professionals. They played in the biggest games, but it just didn't feel like they had an extra gear to go to when they needed it, even though they should, because they're incredibly talented.
Yeah, I don't want to guess or speculate why they didn't go to that next gear and what the mentality was behind the scenes and how they were treating the playoffs. That you can make a lot of arguments for that.
No, man. Please speculate. Go ahead and speculate.
You make a completely valid argument, because in a lot of the leagues where they come from, winning the league is the most important thing. But the MLS system is different, where the playoffs is potentially what matters the most. And first of all, I completely disagree with Jordi Alba. I don't think it's the playoffs that's an issue. It's Inter Miami's performance. He lost, and we're now making excuses, which we shouldn't. The system is not to blame. You had a job to do. You had 3 games to win it, and you did not. As simple as that. And yeah, you make a very, very valid point that they did not understand the magnitude of this. And we kept talking about this, right? We kept saying that this Inter Miami team may potentially go to a completely different gear once the playoffs start. We saw a glimpse of that in that first game. We were like, oh, this team looks locked in. It's like, okay, it's playoff LeBron, right? Like we have in the NBA. But in the next 2 games, it was just completely downhill, back to old habits, back to being complacent in certain positions, and maybe relying a little bit too much on their talent and quality, and just being like, okay, we are the better team on paper, we should beat them. But that's not how it works, right? Atlanta showed that, yes, they finished 9th. They grinded their way through the results throughout the regular season. And then come playoffs, they locked in. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. And when it mattered the most, their captain showed up. Their biggest players who they expect to create goals, Pedro Amador, Miranchuk, Lobjanitse, all contributed, and they played as a team, and Inter Miami did not. And that's maybe something to do with mentality. But yeah, it's a very valid point. But when it comes to Jordi Alba's quote, I completely disagree with him.
Yeah, and if this had come maybe like after the international break and he had said something like, you can't have 3 weeks off between playoff games, okay, I guess that's an actual flaw. But this is, you knew what this was. You should have known what this was for the last year and a half. And then it came time to happen, and you weren't ready for it. I am nervous about the mindset of this team for next year, because it just didn't feel like the mindset was right for this. And that scares me. And part of that might be coaching. We can have that conversation. But from the players who, again, you expect to be prepared for this because they've been in the biggest games in the World Cup and in the Champions League and all that stuff. And then they kind of came out and were flat and imprecise and didn't look like they had it. Back-to-back
Another
games.
valid point, but I'm not as concerned as you about next season. I think this is a lesson learned. This was an experience for all of them. The first time all of them playing a playoff game. We have been traditionally really bad in knockout tournaments this entire season when it comes to CONCACAF, Leagues Cup, and now the playoffs. We've just been terrible when it comes to knockout games. So maybe this is something that the entire team, the entire roster, the entire squad, including the coaching staff, can learn from and make the most of when they go into the next season, because now they know it's not going to be as easy. And honestly, it's a game of two completely different halves when it comes to the regular season and when it comes to the playoffs. You have to be in completely different headspaces. So I'm hoping that we go into the next season realizing that that's how it's going to be.
But like, we were in the right headspace, right? Messi was in good form. He was healthy. Suárez had a brace right before. Jordi Alba, I think, had 2 or 3 assists in that last game against New England. Like, they were coming in good form, healthy, ready to go. And they crumbled under like pressure.
I don't even know if it was pressure. It was just complacency a little bit.
And it was the veterans. It was the stars. It wasn't the young players. Kremasky, I thought, was fine in the series. Yannick Bright was fine.
Yeah, I thought he was
Toto Aviles, I thought he had a good game. Diego Gomez was solid. Redondo was solid. Like, the young players delivered what they were supposed to deliver. It was the stars. It was Jordi Alba. It was Luis Suárez that didn't come through. Matías Rojas.
Matías Rojas didn't have too much opportunity to play. He just played in that last game, but regardless.
But he didn't play well. Yeah. He was a ghost.
Yeah.
So what do you do with that if you're Inter Miami, if you're an Inter Miami fan? And the answer is, we relied on our best players to win us games, and they didn't win us games. And our best players, like, you can't upgrade on your best players. Like, no, not on these best players.
That's the point I was going to make earlier in the show as well, when I was saying that maybe it's worth having a conversation about surrounding some of these best players with as much quality, building the team so that we don't have to rely on the quality of 2 or 3 players when it comes to our superstars to win us the games, right? Build that quality a lot around you.
I don't understand.
That doesn't need to be in terms of upgrading players. It can be tactics, it can be setup, it can be structure, it can be so many different things. So Messi wants to play centrally, right? Utilize that and make the most of it. Jordi Alba will keep putting in crosses in behind. Put someone next to him who's able to give him that outlet to stretch out the defense a little bit. You have to bring all of that together to be able to get the best of this team. You can't just rely on Lionel Messi to get the best of, to do absolute magic to get us out of difficult situations. You have to bring together everything when it comes to defense, when it comes to the midfield balance and setup, when it comes to the front three. We kept talking about this throughout the season, actually, when we said that all Tata Martino has to do is set up the midfield and defense well, and then let the forward line do what they want. That's no longer the case. I would walk back on the words, because I do think this forward line also needs to have a little bit of balance, because we struggle to score goals. So yes, you still rely on the talent of your superstars, but you give them the tools around them so that when there is an issue and there's a struggle, when you have to grind it out, you don't be like, oh, our defense is very poor, so we need to score more goals out there.
No, I don't get that, honestly. And I want to explore deeper, like, explain it to me deeper, because Inter Miami has 2 talented center backs. I know Aviles is getting a lot of flack today. I know David Martinez is getting a lot of flack today. And maybe certainly they get a lot of blame, especially Martinez, because he had a bad individual performance, but he's a solid player. Like, the team has put a good player in that position. Jordi Alba is obviously a great player. Luis Suárez is a great player. Matías Rojas is a very good player. What do you want in the moment is to have way more talent than the other team and put them in a position to succeed. And it felt like it felt like Tata Martino at least did that to some extent, especially going back to the first 2 games, and they didn't deliver. And so if you're an Inter Miami fan, who do you blame for this? Who do you assign? It just is a question to me, because how do you get this team to the next level? If it's not adding Lionel Messi and Luis Suárez and Jordi Alba, then it's the second level of players, the Drake Calenders and the Matthias Rojas's and the Julian Gressels. But you have those guys too. And so it's the young players that are coming through. But Redondo's playing well. Avila's played well. Kramaski played fine. Yannick Bright played well. What is this team missing?
But answer this one question for me. Yeah? Throughout the course of the season, have you ever thought that the balance has been right over a course of 5, 6, 7 games? Have you thought that there's been consistency in performances for this Inter Miami team?
No. Yes. When Yannick Bright first got into the
when Lionel Messi was injured and we were playing a very defensive sort of a style, right? When we were basically sitting back, being a lot more compact, right? What was the one thing that really stood out to you in that sort of a structure?
They were defensively sound.
They were defensively sound. The balance was right, and everyone was on the same page. That's the thing. The chemistry and the balance of this team, when every single person is healthy, is just not there. And it's not the individual players who build out your squad. It's not the individual players who grind out results. It's not individual talent and quality who's going to win you games. It's every single person being on the same page and playing with chemistry and balance across the pitch. Yes, Redondo's a good player. Martinez is a very good player. Aviles is a very good player. But how many times has Aviles and David Martinez played really well together and built that chemistry between them? Are they going to fight for each other when it comes time, right? Are they going to actually have they played enough together to be like, okay, they're a well-functioning, well-oiled machine? It's never felt every single time Inter Miami has gone on that pitch. We've always had, okay, we're good, but we're not perfect. We have some aspects of our game right, but not others. We need to build out a squad that's a well-oiled machine. Columbus does not have as much talent as us. But what they are is every single player on that pitch knows their roles. You can't keep changing formations one week to the next, to the third, to the fourth. We've played 4 different formations. We don't know what our best starting 11 is. We don't know what our best preferred forward line is. We don't know what our preferred formation is. When you don't have that level of consistency, when you don't have that level of balance across the board, when you don't know what your preferred style of play is, you're never going to succeed when it comes to knockout rounds. I want a well-coached team. Yes, Sean, you're absolutely right in this. I want a well-drilled, oiled machine, and that's not what Inter Miami was this season. We relied on our talent, and that's why we didn't make it past the first round.
Sounds like you want a well-coached team. Before we get to Tata, because he's the next topic. Inter Miami has enough talent in the front line. You agree?
Yeah.
Inter Miami has enough talent in the midfield. You agree?
Yeah.
Inter Miami has enough talent in the back line. You agree?
Yep.
Inter Miami has enough talent at goalkeeper. You agree?
Think so.
Okay. So it sounds like the problem is this team is either not well balanced or not well coached. Now, you shrugged a little bit on the midfield, and I think there's a good argument to say there's enough talent. It's just not necessarily distributed in the types of ways you would ideally want. And the same thing with the back line. But is that a talent issue? Is that something Inter Miami can fix in the offseason? Or is it a Tata problem? Because Tata built this roster, right? They knew they had Kramaski and David Ruiz as young and up-and-coming sort of box-to-box midfielders, and they still went out and got Federico Redondo, and they still went out and got Julian Gressel, instead of getting either a true number 6 or just keeping Gregory or getting a true number 10. They didn't get a right back for too long, and so Cello Wiegand came in late and was also sort of what was available at that time because they had to wait until they got rid of DeAndre Yedlin. The center backs are who Tata Martino wanted. He brought in Toto Aviles. He brought in David Martinez. He brought in Nico Frede. Maybe don't blame him for Christoph, but we haven't seen Christoph in quite some time. So it feels like you're saying Tata Martino didn't build this team in the right way, or he's not coaching this team to be disciplined in the right way. Is that an accurate description of how you feel?
Yeah, 100%. And I would say almost 60-40 to 60 not built in the right way, 40 to not coached in the right way. How much better would you feel if we had Gregory in that midfield, game in, game out?
Yeah.
And why? Why would you? Is it because you think Benjamin Kramaski can't do a job? Is it because you think David Ruiz is not good enough? Is it because you think Redondo is not good enough? They're talented players, all of them. But just put take all of the 3 players I listed and just put them next to Gregory. How much better would you feel about this midfield?
Yeah.
Every single one of them paired with.
And even you felt that way with Yannick Bright, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But the fact that Yannick Bright had to emerge as that player
is an exception.
No,
I would almost be hesitant to say that Yannick Bright produces the same level of performances in the next season, because he really outperformed what we expected him to. And I will hold my hands up and I will preach to God if he genuinely takes above another level up. But what I'm trying to say is, Sir Alex Ferguson said this, and it always stands out. One thing that you cannot expect young players to do is be consistent. That's why we struggle so much with Toto Aviles. That's why we don't always get the best performances from Benjamin Kramaski. Yes, Yannick Bright has been phenomenal. Diego Gomez has taken that next leap, but not all of them are able to consistently be that good. And when you do want to use that young talent core as your basis, you need to surround them with a little bit more veteran firepower. We have that in certain sports. Yes, Sergio Busquets is a veteran in that midfield, but he's not physical enough. He's not MLS vetted out, right? How much better would I feel if I had Gregory in there, or someone like, let's take an Atlanta player. If you put Muyumba in there with someone like Kramaski, you just know, okay, you get stability, you get consistency, you get
have a name
balance.
I have a name for you.
Go on.
What if they just brought Dixon Arroyo back? He was cheap. He was a veteran, and he did a job.
Exactly. And you just need to add balance, because you might have all the tools available to you, but if you don't know how to use a drill machine, and if you hammer with a drill machine, then you're not, it's not up to the tools, right? It's up to the craftsman. So I do think there's a case for both, that Tata Martino needs to find the balance and Tata Martino needs to coach this team better, because all of it needs to come together for Inter Miami to take that next step into the final MLS Cup.
Okay, well, here's the thing. Tata Martino is 63 years old. He's not going to change. He's not going to change. Someone said in the chat, he's the canyon with the waves crashing against him. He's not going to change. So what does that mean? How do you feel about it?
I don't think Tata Martino is the coach to take this team to the next level or get the best out of the young core that we have. It's as simple as that. He doesn't put the players in a position to succeed. As simple as that.
I find it hard to disagree with you. And I think Tata does a lot of things really well. In terms of bringing in talent, he goes out there and finds it. I think he did a great job, and we didn't appreciate it enough on how well this team improved on set piece defense. I mean, that was a huge liability last year, and that wasn't a talking point for the last 4 months. But he also doesn't organize his midfield well. He doesn't prioritize defensive bite in the midfield, which is so strange to me in an athletic league like this. And there's an over-reliance on the best players. And he also just makes strange decisions sometimes. Like, what is Julian Gressel? What is Robert Taylor? What happened to these guys? And so why are they starting every game all year if you're not planning on using them in the most important games? I like both of those players as players.
Bench options,
I think they can contribute. Not even bench options. Like, you can start them, but also create a game plan where they can be successful and then use them in the biggest games.
And you know what? One thing about Tata, we need to start with the positives, right? So Tata Martino really did well when he was under pressure, under the cosh. When he didn't have too many options, he put the pieces on the board and he helped them succeed when Messi wasn't there, when we needed to get results. And he is one of the big reasons why we actually have that MLS points record and the supporter shield. Let's not take that away from him. But when it comes in knockout games, when it's do or die situation, he freezes up. He's a deer in a headlight, right?
But I want to stop you there because Bizrat makes a great point. Bright covered up all of the defensive and midfield problems with his performances.
Exactly.
And so I don't even know if it was Tata that worked our way through that difficult part of the schedule where we really won the supporter shield. It was the emergence of Yannick Bright that really changed this team's destiny and made us believe that going into anything we went into, we could succeed. And so I'm just really, I think it's Tata. I think he's the thing you can change, right? You can get a new right back and take out Cello Weekend. You can get a new left winger and, bring in Neymar, whatever. Bring in a new center back. That you're not going to get a guy who's world-class at center back. You're not going to get a world-class midfielder.
Even if I get Walker Zimmerman in my center back role, I'm fine with that. That's a good center back.
No, but I guess my point is Walker Zimmerman and David Martinez on their best days are not hugely different. Toto Aviles, maybe he's a little bit less error prone because he's a veteran, but it's not some seismic difference in talent. It's the fact that they are not put in positions to succeed. And that to me goes to Tata Martino. And more importantly, it's in the biggest games, in the most important games, they're not put in positions to succeed. And so that's why I think Tata Martino is the thing to go. You're not going to get a more talented team than what Inter Miami has. And a part of me feels like in this moment, in game one of this series, that is the most talented team Inter Miami will ever have in the history of the team, because the veterans are going to get a year older. Who knows where they'll be this time next year? You're going to lose some of the depth. It's going to be really hard to keep Matías Rojas. It's going to be really hard to keep Christoph and Gressel and Robert Like, you're going to lose some of these guys that gave you really high quality depth. Franco Negri, maybe Campana, right? So it's going to be very hard to improve on this team. The young guys, Yannick Bright, we already saw with Kermaski gets a new contract. They're going to be more expensive to keep around because their performances dictate they get paid more. And so if this wasn't good enough, I don't think you're going to be able to take a significant step up in terms of the talent on the roster. And so what can you try and impact and improve in a significant way to make sure this doesn't happen again? To me, that feels like it's the coach. It feels like it's the coach. And
and I don't think Tata Martino had a consistent plan that he wanted to play with Inter Miami. When he realized that those players cannot play that plan, cannot play that 3-man backline with the players that we have, he shifted away from it, and then it just became game to game. And over the course of the season, it can't just be a game-to-game decision of how you want to play. You need to set a consistent play style. There needs to be a pattern. There needs to be something that keeps this team functioning well. Everyone needs to understand their roles. And I don't think Tata Martino is the one to take the team forward into the next stage that we need to go to. So I completely agree with you on that.
Yeah, I will just say, I think in a league like MLS where it's so hard to keep players consistently for years on end because of how much roster turnover and how difficult it is to make the rosters work, I think having like a system coach is really tough. And it's even tougher when you have to build the team around certain players, right? If you can build the entire team into the system, it's one thing, but this team needs to be built around Messi. And so I think that's very difficult to do, but I agree with you. I don't think Tata's the guy to do it. And so Gabriella says, do you think we've already seen the peak of Miami? I think in terms of on paper talent, I think we've seen the peak of Miami. I would be surprised if this team is more talented next year. And I think we can hope that it's more balanced and some of the depth is rearranged, right? You can use Franco Negri and take him off the roster and put a similarly talented player at center back, and you feel like the roster is more well-balanced, or defensive midfielder or whatever. But in terms of overall talent level, I think it's going to be hard for the team to improve unless there's significant roster changes in terms of the rules that will allow Inter Miami to do more things. So, okay. Have you had your say on Tata Martino?
I have had my say on Tata Martino, and I don't think there's any point harping on that situation anymore.
Okay. Last question. Is 2024 a failure?
Yeah, it is, undoubtedly. I'm very disappointed. I am not happy with the way things ended for Inter Miami. And it's a season of what could have been rather than what we've done. Honestly, we haven't done much, and it's an absolute failure because of the expectations set by the players and the coaching staff. We were going to go for 4 trophies. We ended up with one. And of all the 4, this was probably the lowest on the list anyways. So
Yeah. We didn't say, let's win 4 trophies. Inter Miami said, let's win 4 trophies. Tata Martino and Julian Gressel and I think Drake Callender said, we're going to win 4 trophies. And the season ticket prices reflected a team that was going to win 4 trophies. And the tickets for opposing fans reflected a team that was going to win 4 trophies. And they failed. Congratulations to them. I think there was a lot of bright moments in this season, and I don't want to let that be forgotten because I remember what it was like to lose 6-7 games in a row and have your coach fired and feel terrible about it. But they set the expectations. The club set the expectations, and they failed. And so what does that mean for next year? I'm sure we'll spend a lot of time talking about that this offseason, but this team was brought together to dominate and win all the trophies, or at least compete in a way that you can win all the trophies. And I'll remind you, we didn't even make it past the quarterfinals in any of these tournaments. We made it to the round of 16 in the Leagues Cup, the round of 16 in the MLS, Cup playoffs. Didn't make the playoffs last year. We get to the quarterfinals of the CONCACAF Champions Cup where we look inept or incapable of competing at that level. And that's not good enough, especially when you consider that this team has the talent that it has. And so how do you solve that? I think the easiest thing is to replace the coach. But again, next year they're going to have the Club World Cup, which, in terms of how Inter Miami fares there is sort of not that important. But you're going to have the CONCACAF Champions Cup, which is going to be vital, right? It's going to be more important than it was this year. You're going to have the MLS Cup playoffs again next year, which is going to be super important. The Leagues Cup might be a little different. We'll see how the format pulls out, but same thing with the US Open Cup. Who knows if Miami will participate in that next year? I would love to see them do it, but you're talking about a really full schedule. So I don't know, but this season was definitely a failure. And I'll also add, they brought in Tata Martino to win trophies, right? They brought in Lionel Messi to get the brand exposure and the worldwide prestige and be a big fuss and sell jerseys and get ticket prices up and, all of those things that Lionel Messi brings. They brought in Busquets and Jordi Alba, so he had a couple friends. They brought in Suárez, so he had a couple friends. But they brought in Tata Martino to win trophies. They brought in Matías Rojas to win trophies. They brought in David Martinez to win trophies. They brought in Federico Redondo to win trophies. Those guys, that second layer, they came in to dominate. They came in to win. They came in because they wanted to be a part of something special. And Inter Miami hasn't delivered. Julian Gressel, same thing. Came in to win trophies. So, Nico Freire, same thing. This season has to be a failure.
You created a deep roster to go through all these tournaments and get to the end of all these tournaments. And yes, you may get to the final of a couple and lose, but you wanted to win at least 2 of them,
but they
right?
didn't. They didn't get to the final.
They did not.
They didn't come
one.
close
and
in any of these tournaments.
I would say we underperformed in most of the games that mattered. Basically, we fell short in every single game that mattered. We did not live up to expectations. Yes, the supporter shield was different because it was a more league format where you can rectify your mistakes in the next game if you make an error. But when it mattered the most, when we needed to show up, both in terms of players and coaching staff, we failed. And by that metric, we weren't good enough. And the season has definitely not lived up to expectations. And it's a harsh reality. You have to go back to the drawing board, but it's exactly what it is.
Inter Miami played 5 do-or-die games this season, and they started with a 3-1 win against Nashville in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. And so, great for them. Turns out Nashville's not as good as we thought they were at the time, but you got a 3-1 win. That was very impressive. They got that game over with early. The next do-or-die game, it was an incompetent 3-1 loss to Monterrey on the road. In the Leagues Cup, they did get a 4-3 win against Toronto where they looked like they were going to cruise and they got a red card and sort of had to survive. That was not a particularly good showing. The next one they lost, the Columbus Crew. That was a game that they felt like they should have won, and then incompetence cost them in the second half, and they blow a 2-0 lead. And then, of course, this game against Atlanta United, where they just didn't feel like they had the urgency to go out there and compete in a way that was going to be special enough to win, or at least, prove that they should be champions. So really disappointing in the biggest games. You're absolutely right. How do you fix that?
Go back to the drawing board, man. You have to change the mentality of this team. And we've talked about winners winning, and we haven't won when it matters the most, which is quite concerning, actually. And you can blame external circumstances for why we didn't win. Yes, David Ruiz got a red card in that Monterrey game, which sort of derailed our plan. Against David Ruiz, yeah. David Ruiz got a red card, right? I think in the first leg of the Monterrey game. And then, you can say refereeing decisions or injuries or something was not clicking, but at the end of the day, you got to look inside and wonder why we didn't perform as an organization when we needed to. And that goes with players, coaches, everything across the board. And when that happens, you have to go back to scratch. You have to start from the beginning. The foundations were not placed well, and the mentality was just not there. You've already touched upon this when it comes to the playoffs. Were the players in the right mindset to understand how important this actually is? And playing Atlanta in regular season is not the same as playing Atlanta in the playoffs. And you have to understand that. It requires an adjustment of mentality. And I'm hoping that this is a learning lesson. I hope that the Monterrey game would have been a learning lesson for Tata Martino. Then came the Columbus game. He did something very similar where he made no changes. That I thought would be a learning lesson. And it just hasn't improved. And you have to learn from these experiences. And if not, you're going to make some changes and you're going to make some adjustments in-house. Starts with the coaching staff, right? Always starts.
Can we go back to Tata? Because I don't think I've had my fill on Tata.
Go on. I will let you have your rant now.
No. I just have a question for you. If you don't fire Tata after this, then he has to be with the team for the rest of the Messi era, right?
Yeah. I mean,
if
if Tata Martino was not able to deliver you the MLS Cup, the Leagues Cup, the CONCACAF Champions Cup, got you the Supporters Shield, next season, if he doesn't get you the MLS Cup, Leagues Cup, CONCACAF Champions Cup, you're not going to fire him again, right? Or are you?
No, but then you're talking about
do your expectations change now? Yeah,
right.
You run the entire season next season, and you're basically rinsing and repeating the same thing we've done this season. I don't think Tata Martino is going to change any of his way he approaches football, the way he tries to play, the way he wants to play. I don't think he's going to change any of that. So you would expect more or less the same of what you had, and you will see the season through. I don't expect him to be kicked out in the middle of the season. So you're absolutely right. He's going to be here until Messi's here and potentially not win anything else.
Because you're not going to fire him if he loses the CONCACAF Champions Cup next year, because you're then getting into
precedent.
Well, not only that, you're then getting into the Club World Cup. You don't want to bring in a new coach that's trying to develop a new system and all that stuff. Like, it has to be in the off season so you can develop something that could be a winner of multiple trophies. You're not going to win multiple trophies if you're making halfway hires in the middle of the season and you're not getting the best of it. Like, that's not going to happen. So,
and if you fire a coach in the middle of the season, you're basically saying the season's done. It's going to basically be a little bit of a failure, because then you can't expect the coach to start from scratch in the middle of the season and then win everything. Then you're expecting him to stabilize the ship and make the best out of the worst situation. And that's not the situation Inter Miami wants to be in.
And beyond that, this era of Inter Miami has a dead end in terms of like when it will end. And that's when Messi decides to retire. It's only so long. It's not like you're building a cohesive unit like the Columbus Crew are trying to do that could last beyond players and beyond. Like, it's not that. This is, you have a set timeline. And so you either fire him now and say he's not the coach that's going to get us to winning everything, or you're saying we're okay that he's not winning everything because we believe he will next year, even though he hasn't shown anything to prove that he will. So you're basically saying we're okay if he doesn't win everything. And considering the ambition you've shown with going out and signing Lionel Messi and Suárez and Busquets and Jordi Alba, and again, even that second layer, which they don't get enough credit for acquiring and putting together, the Matías Rojas's of the world, the Redondos of the world, the Gomez's and the Julian Gressels, all of those players, right? That is huge ambition to be able to build this roster and to not deliver the best possible coach that you can on top of that, I think is selling yourself short. And
also,
it
you
would
may
be an
never be
incredible
able
shame.
to attract that level of talent in your team again if you don't deliver upon it the first time. Because players like Redondo,
you'll never get another Messi because, you know,
of course.
of course.
But also, if you look at players like Redondo, Gomez, the youngsters coming in from South America, you're not going to attract them if you don't deliver on the promise, right? They're going to look at it and they're going to be like, oh, Federico Redondo went there, but he didn't win anything. He changed teams after 2 seasons. So why should I go there? I can, maybe continue to play in Argentina and then make a move to Europe. So you want to make sure you capitalize on having this talent in your team before you let them go to newer pastures. And the best way to do that is by winning trophies and showing that the reason this roster is so good on paper is because it can actually come together and bring you results.
Well, and also the MLS is only going to get better and better from a talent perspective. And so the MLS Cup is going to be harder to win every year. And that star above the badge is going to be harder to win every year. And the CONCACAF Champions Cup is going to get harder and harder to win every year because of it. And same thing with Leagues Cup, same thing with the US Open Cup. And so those things are only going to get harder to win. And you're never going to have this much talent again because you're never going to have Messi again. And he's only going to get older. And it's already going to be difficult to keep this roster together as is or as competitive. So I think you have to pull it on Tata Martino and say, we need a better coach. We have to try. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I'm at that stage as well. I've not vocalized this, but I've never thought that Tata Martino is the right coach for this team. And I do think there are better options there. I know there's been some conversations or some ideas thrown around with who could potentially be the Inter Miami's coach after this. But I don't know, man. I think we do need a little bit of a more flexible and tactically flexible coach than Tata Martino.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up? This is, I think we needed to have that conversation about Tata and this team and everything because I don't think it was good enough for what Inter Miami wants to be. And so,
and you know what?
Like, they need to hold themselves accountable.
And the more we watch the playoffs without Inter Miami, and the more this digests, and we realize that we're actually out of the playoffs and we're not going to win the MLS Cup this season, it's going to settle in, and we're going to continue to have this conversation. And I think it's going to get more and more robust, and our opinions are going to get stronger because we had a really good chance. And someone mentioned in the chat earlier that this, with Cincinnati out, with Columbus out, this was Inter Miami's best possible chance to get to the MLS Cup final and potentially win it. And we did not capitalize on that. And it's really going to sting in a few months. And we've got plenty of time to think about it now before the next season starts. So I feel like we're going to have this conversation more and more. But in one word, disappointing, very disappointing.
Yeah, very disappointing indeed. And listen, I don't think they've made plans yet. I don't think they've made decisions yet because I don't think anyone in that organization thought the season was going to end last night. So don't be surprised if Tata Martino is not fired tomorrow. Don't be surprised if he's not fired next week. Don't be surprised if they aren't ready to make decisions yet because I don't think they thought there was any chance they would be here yet. I think they thought there was 100% chance they were going to be playing in 2 weeks after the international break. So they're going to have their meetings this week and they're going to see what they feel like is the best way to proceed. But I think from a fan perspective, a lot of people are not into Tata. A lot of people are disappointed with how this season went. And I think that's because Inter Miami sold them something bigger and better. And I think that's fair for fans to feel that way. So it was a great season in a lot of ways. A lot of young players came through and emerged, and academy prospects continued to sort of be an impactful part of this team, and they won a lot of games. And I won't take advantage of that because I remember us winning, once a month or whatever. But
and goes to show, man, football is a fickle game. You win some days and you lose the next. So you better enjoy the moments that you're winning, and you better enjoy the moments where you have that joy. So take it with a grain of salt, man. Ups and downs are part of the game.
Okay, here's the deal, guys. We also weren't expecting the offseason to hit this early. And so we haven't had our discussion of exactly what schedule we want to follow this offseason. We were just expecting to do a couple midweek episodes and then get to that Orlando City game and then hopefully the semifinals and the finals. And we were going to worry about the offseason a month from now. That's obviously not the case. So over the next day or two, we will, Saur and I will get on the phone and figure out exactly what we want to do. But here's what I will say. Our next podcast together will be an off-season primer. I have seen too many times following other sports, following other podcasts, they sort of have the season end and they take a long break before they want to talk about the offseason. And I've always hated that because I am ready to get started for next year, to get excited for next year. So we're going to spend the next episode or two talking about the offseason. I might squeeze in a Tata Martino episode, but we'll see on that. And then we'll, after we've had a week and a half to digest, we'll sort of look back on the 2020 season, give out some awards, do our top 20 draft, enjoy what this season was. But before we do all of that, I want to do an off-season primer, get everyone a sense of what's possible this offseason, where we think the team could improve, what they need to improve on, etc. And then you guys can use that episode for really a basis for how this offseason could go for the next 3 months until the regular season starts. I will remind you guys, we are not getting a bye in the first round of the CONCACAF Champions Cup like we did last year. That only goes to the defending champion and the Leagues Cup champion. So we will enter in the first round. That means our first competitive game is the first week of February, which is not that far from now. And that means we need to start preseason probably in early to mid-January. So we're talking about 2 months off, obviously more than we wanted, but certainly less, certainly more than we expected too. So we'll be here. We'll be doing probably 2 episodes a week. And until then, Saur, you got any final words?
No, man, just get behind your team, guys. This is part and parcel of football. You win some, you lose some. Atlanta was the better team in this series, and Inter Miami season ended in a disappointment. But here we are. Support them in good times and support them in bad. And as we mentioned at the start of the episode, it's been an absolute pleasure being here, talking with Scotty, talking with you guys, discussing Inter Miami. And this is just the start of the Driping Dialogue. We're going to go into the next season just as motivated and excited to talk with you guys about what the future holds. And it's going to be bright. It's going to be a bright future. And hopefully Inter Miami can take us to the promised land next season, because there is always next season.
All right, guys. As always, thanks for being here. Have a wonderful night, and we will talk to you soon. Till then, goodbye. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this, and have a wonderful day.